Welcome to session 76 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. The hypnotic rash is moving further inland and gaining even more moisture. Welcome, fellow hypnotic storm riders. You're in the right place. And let's welcome our leader. He's back from the Canadian wilderness. Aha. He loves neoclassical dark wave, is researching his genetic ancestry, and he's secretly hoping that he's actually black.
Damn right.
Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Mandel.
I am back from the Canadian wilderness. Chris, it's great to be back in Hypno East. I had a blast up in Minden, Ontario, having a wonderful vacation. But let's address the trio of things you just brought before the world.
I want to talk about this genetic ancestry.
Well, we're getting there. I want to talk about neoclassical dark wave.
Okay, go for it.
This is a music type I stumbled on by accident. It's modern music, but it sounds ancient. And the best version of it comes from a band called Dead Can Dance. And it's an Australian woman and an English guy, and they put out some of the strangest, most compelling music I've ever heard. I've got to get you into this.
Is it on Apple Music?
Oh, is it ever?
Awesome.
Yes, we love Apple. And stay away from the ball of tape. I'm not saying Microsoft. And yes, researching the genetic ancestry. I am, man. I have sent for the tube where you spin in it up to a line, and it takes a considerable amount of saliva and drool because they want 2 samples in case only one gets spoiled. Anyway, you spit in this thing. It goes in a postpaid envelope back to them, envelope if you're American, and then within 6 to 8 weeks, the world's largest ancestral DNA database sends you all the information on your genetic heritage. And we're talking 700,000 indicators in the human genome from both parents, like mother and father, not just the mother's mitochondria that some do. And then you find out who you are, like what's your history. My buddy, I won't say his name, but he's reasonably famous. He thought he was Sicilian entirely, and he's Sicilian, Greek, and 25% Irish. I am hoping, as you said, for black blood. I absolutely am, man. If I got 1% black or more, at least 1%, I will be thrilled.
It would explain your love of the blues.
The blues, primitive black American music. I love the blues. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love Langston Hughes, the poet, amazing black poet. My friends find it amusing that I want to be black. But if I'm going to carry this genetic stuff with me everywhere. I just start telling people I'm black. And it's my kick to the pouch of racism, which is the stupidest thing imaginable. So, excellent, man.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about the theme for today. This podcast is all about fun.
Yes, it is.
And in fact, it really resonates with us because our entire business model is around helping people live a fun life.
While having
fun ourselves, right? We love the lives that we live, and we have fun, and we want everyone to have fun. And so we thought we would have a podcast talking about fun, but bringing it into terms that will be useful for hypnotists, useful for just those of you who are interested listeners but not practicing hypnosis.
Right.
So how do you want to start this? I think we should begin with a discussion around ego states because...
Okay, but let's do an intro into this, Chris, in greater depth, because this is really important stuff. I'm a true believer in having a better life all the time. He's just nudging me for shuffling the papers on the desk.
Mike's shuffling papers. I'm like, don't do it.
Enneagram 8, I've just done it even more, just so I won't be controlled. But fun. Oh, having fun, right now, at work, having a laugh. It's just a thing we do. Just jokes, having a laugh. Seriously, guys, life has got to be fun. And so many people, the majority of people I've been running into lately get so frickin' busy, their life does not get lived because they've just got activities filling every moment. Work is filling too much of their lives. You have to stop to make your life fun. If there's no fun, what's the point? So you can work yourself into an early grave and then die? I don't get it. But it goes back to, Chris just mentioned ego states. And I just wanted to say before we got into it that you are in control of the fun in your life. You are the author of the fun.
Oh, that's such a good line.
I thought it was freaking brilliant.
It goes up there with I'm attempting to remember. It was your line. You said, "Make yourself your number one project."
Oh, isn't that the best?
I loved that when I heard
that.
Did
I
from
say
you.
that?
You said that, but I don't know if it's your line or if you got it elsewhere.
Well, it's my line now.
Okay, awesome. There you go.
I've reached an age.
But you know what else?
I'm claiming it.
If you think back to the last podcast episode, we talked about relationships. What do you think people do when they're having some sort of struggle in their personal relationships? They have this not fun state installed. They have this serious or worried or they have they're not in a fun state. When they're having a problem in a marriage or a business relationship or something else,
or
they're not
even just overwhelm or something?
Yeah, anything like that. They're not having fun. They're not in that fun state of mind. They're in some other state of mind. It could be serious. It could be attempting to win. I need to prove myself
something
right.
Very competitive.
It could be, something like that. So fun is very, very important.
Well, it is, and you have to question, what is the point of your life? Is it to earn as much money as you can and die? Is it to be busy every conceivable second?
Nope.
A very dear friend of mine, he's overworked as it is, and he told me there are 2 managers where he works in this very high-end retail store, and they've just sent one of them away to Kingston, Ontario, to manage a store there, and have gotten him no support mechanism. So he is now doing the job of 2 people. He was already overwhelmed.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun, Mike.
Yeah, this is a question, isn't it? But what is fun? I mean, what are we talking about? Mark Twain years ago said, there are men in England, of course this is when he wrote it in the 1800s, he said there are men in England who pay huge sums of money to be permitted to ride as coachmen and help these lords as they're going to House of Lords and so on and be their footmen. And he said they pay money for this privilege because it's seen as a privilege. He said if they were offered money for it, they would turn it down because now it had become work.
Yeah.
And they're being paid for the privilege. What do you do that you're not being paid for? Of course, if your work is fun,
that's
okay,
a good criteria, because when you were talking about what is fun, it made me think, well, how do you identify, how do you know something is fun? What's your strategy?
What is the evidence criteria?
Evidence criteria, there you go.
And for me, it's I'm laughing a lot when I'm having fun. I mean, laughter is tied to it intimately.
Something that you would do voluntarily, obviously. You would not expect to be paid to have fun.
Yeah, waterboarding.
You would, in fact, in many cases, be willing to pay to have fun, like going to see a baseball game, the Blue Jays.
Right,
as we're recording
Disney World.
As we're recording this, the Blue Jays just got knocked out of the
horrendous.
Oh, the postseason, and yeah, a lot of people are paying a lot of money to go see that game because it's fun for them, right?
No, you've raised a good point here, Chris, because so much of this is absolutely arbitrary. You watch something like baseball, or we're in Canada, so hockey. And the interesting thing is when there is a final, like the Stanley Cup in hockey, it might be 2 different cities involved. Well, it always will be. So let's say it is Toronto. Well, the likelihood of that is
very slim.
About the same of Comet Kahutek coming back in the next 5 minutes. Go look out the window. You're not going to see it. But the other one is, let's say it's, Detroit. So Detroit versus Toronto. So it's the final game. And this is entirely based on the movement of a piece of flat, hard rubber sliding on some ice, which is kind of stupid when you break it down to the components. But it gives a lot of people a lot of fun, a lot of happiness to vicariously participate as a city. Right? This is our city. This is our team. Never mind that most of the guys playing hockey are Canadian anyway, or were at one point. So, but it's the outcome of it, Chris. So Detroit wins. They get the Stanley Cup. Toronto loses. The same motion of this piece of hardened rubber between goalposts of a net has put one city into overdrive of enjoyment and fun, and the other one into depression.
Practically.
People are turning over cars and riding with the police. I mean, it's the same event, but the framework has changed the meaning.
Okay, so that's an interesting segue, because we are going to be talking about depression. But before we do, we need to talk about ego states. Okay, well, let's pre-frame this. Ego states go back to the work of Paul Fredern, who I think was a compatriot of Freud. It was taken up by Watkins and Watkins, a husband and wife psychologist team. And then I got my study on this from the work of Gordon Emerson, a psychologist out of Australia. Ego states are sub-personalities. They're actual personalities in the composite crystal that is you as a human. So you can think of it as parts of your personality. So parts, sub-personalities, ego states. We're talking about the same thing. But the interesting thing is they're not something you imagine. They are part of the physical structure of your brain, as Emerson points out. They are burned in neural pathways and preferences that over time have built up these networks of protein, kinase C, whatever, so that they fire digitally. And by that I mean they aren't all running at the same time. You'll have one of them in what is known as the executive. We've said this in previous podcasts, I know, but it bears repeating.
the executive is the control panel, the control seat. And only one ego state can be executive at any given time.
Okay, so when we were planning this podcast, you gave me the classroom metaphor, which I really liked, and I'm going to ask you to share.
Explain it then, Chris, and let's see if you got it.
Okay, sure. So what you explained to me, and what I thought was a very good explanation, was the
wrong.
idea...
Just having fun.
Nice.
Having a laugh at work. Go on. Sorry.
Pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine a bunch of kids in a classroom.
Yeah.
And all these different kids, you can think of them as ego states. They have different personality types. There's the kid that sits in the back and hasn't spoken up in ages. There's the kid that's always putting his hand up to answer questions. There's the kid that's the class clown. There's the kid that's very serious about documenting his homework or whatever it is, right? So there's all these different personalities. And if you were to imagine, for example, the teacher getting called down to the office momentarily for an important phone call, and the teacher says to one of the kids, okay, you're in charge for the next 5 minutes. Well, how that classroom behaves is going to be a function of which kid is in that executive control position.
Right, and realize, that's very well done, continuing the classroom metaphor, and this is all Gordon Emerson again, not mine, but continuing the classroom metaphor, some of these kids are, class clowns, some are boisterous, some are mousy kids, some are gregarious, some of them are solitary, some of them have not been heard from maybe in months or years, and others love to be up front and take control of everything.
And so where the metaphor, and all metaphors do break down at some point, they can't be perfect maps across to the real situation.
Otherwise, they would be the real situation.
Right, exactly. So in this case, you can have a situation where, for example, two kids are fighting for that control position, but only one can actually be in control.
Right.
And so in the actual ego state theory, one state is in executive at any moment in time.
Right. And while Chris is talking to you now, he has an ego state that is executive, and so do I. And this is the one we typically do for our podcast. Now, your ego states serve different purposes. So that the one that is in a boardroom at someone's work will not be the ego state when they're playing with their children or their dog.
Or at least you'd hope not.
You would hope not. And teachers are notorious for having their teaching ego state hog the executive. This has been documented. Teachers have trouble getting the ego state out of the executive, especially for small children. And, they'll talk to you like you're a kid. And my wife and I saw this firsthand. We were at a friend's house years ago. His wife was a teacher fairly high up in the school system in Ontario. And the sad thing is she actually went on to commit suicide later. She was a deeply unhappy person. And what happened was we went over to the house. My wife was wearing something white. I can't remember what it was. We walked through the door, and their dog had just come in out of the backyard, jumped up all over her, and covered her clothes with mud.
Oh.
It was a muddy yard. Instead of being a normal human being and saying, oh, I'm so sorry, let me get a sponge, I can't believe this has happened, and screaming at the dog and locking him in the basement or something, instead, the woman turns to my wife and smiles and said, well, that'll show you not to wear white clothes around a dog, won't it? And this is clearly her teacher. Ego state was executive. So the question is, how is this going to play out in your life with fun? Do you know, Chris, depressed people, they have depressive ego states that hog the executive. They don't want to leave.
And this is a really important part of the conversation here, because when people say they've been, let's say, diagnosed with depression, which is a thing,
a stuck state, a label,
we're really now getting into a discussion how we can call ego states, maybe you can say that they drive your moods too, right? Because if I have a fun ego state in an executive, I'm in a fun mood, I'm in a happy mood, or whatever it is you want to call it.
And that's not the one you want to have at a funeral, saying to everybody, come on, lighten up.
Right. So if you have a depressive ego state in the executive, and your mood is feeling depressed or feeling sad, or however you phrase it, it's driven by behavior, and it's driven by the ego state that's in the executive at that moment in time, right? So it's not something that you suffer from. It's something that you're suffering from, something you're doing that is causing suffering.
Right. So if you have this depressive ego state hogging the executive, you got to dislodge it. You got to get it out of there. And Griffin and Tyrrell, brilliant British psychologists from human givens theory, said depression, I hope I'm quoting them correctly, depression is a sign that you need to get moving. And that means moving in your life, and it also means physically moving, because as John Grinder points out with his brilliant New Code NLP, when the body moves, you can change your state. And when the body breathes, you change the motion and you change your physiology. All these things shift. A depressed person doesn't move. They sleep too much. They lie in bed. They lie on the couch. They do overeat, and they've got to get up and get moving and do the things that used to be fun. So let's talk about that list.
Moving and breathing are right at the top of the Grinder model.
Yes,
breathing specifically is at the very
Breathing
top. Physiology is below it.
Right. So
how
breathing
you
will
move.
change your physiology.
Yeah.
And physiology will change your state. And your state will change your performance. But you can also elicit the list. And Chris and I were talking about getting the list of things that will dislodge this depressive state. And I've seen this work. I do not treat depression. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist. Neither is Chris. We are unconscious coaches.
Mm-hmm.
We are educators. We show people how to walk away from their problems.
Yeah. In fact, when somebody tells me that they've been clinically diagnosed as depressed, I immediately tell them, well, I can't work on your depression, but I can show you how to get into a positive state so that you're having fun in your life. And if your depression happens to go away, well, that's not my fault.
No,
I smile.
Yeah, not my fault. Beautiful. Hey, and backing it up for a second, I did mention the funeral thing, and this is absolutely true. I've never told you this in my life, Chris, but my wife and I know a family, and I think the girl has since passed away, but she had some severe mental problems. And this girl had only one ego state. I mean, I'm convinced.
Okay,
and it was sort of this fun-loving, eyes wide open, Nimnu, life is wonderful ego state. And I was at a funeral she was at.
Oh, and was she inappropriately behaving?
Like you cannot imagine. She's going up to people and saying, "Why are you crying? What's the matter? Why have you got a Kleenex in your hand? What's
kidding.
the matter?"
Oh.
So when Heather and I want to jolt each other out of some state, we'll do that. We'll say, "Why have you got a Kleenex in your hand? Why are you crying?"
It's a great pattern interrupt that'll fire off that past memory. It's anchored to it's an anchored pattern interrupt, right?
Exactly. So if I was working with someone who is depressing, I would say, make a list with the person. What, do you have fun? No, I can't have fun anymore. Well, what prevents you? Well, I don't feel like, so your feelings ever been wrong? Well, sometimes. What did you used to do when you knew how to have fun?
And
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, if you did know, and I'll get the list. I'll find out what are the things, and I mean, Robbins did this.
Shopping list.
Robbins did this beautifully.
So this is essentially a shopping list of past things that you have not bought in this case, but past things that you've
sometimes helps. Retail
past things
therapy.
that you've done, past activities you've engaged in, past people you've hung around, past situations where you were having fun.
Right, and funny you said about things you bought. And thank you for not using that horrible thing, boughten. I've heard people, it makes me want to kill them. But yeah, my wife calls it retail therapy. I don't think it's her term, but it's a great one. And you know, Chris, I know that I have that about myself. I have to watch that. Because if I get overwhelmed, and you know I don't like being overwhelmed, it takes away my fun, and I have too much stuff happening, one of the things I've done in the past is gone out and bought something to feel better. Once I bought a Soloflex, which is a couple of grand. Another, my wife just comes home, this thing's being delivered. Another time, I went out and bought a mountain bike. It was like $1,000 or something. And I know that about myself. So what I've learned is I scale it down. So last week I was overwhelmed. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Bought myself a cup of coffee.
No, I needed more than that. I went out and bought a new cold steel knife.
Oh, yeah.
It was like $40. And I recognized why I was doing it.
And you still got the same enjoyment out of it.
Same enjoyment. And now I'm wrapping it. My wife doesn't know yet, but she's giving it to me for Christmas.
Wonderful.
But yeah, so back to ego states. Go ahead. You were saying something.
So, yeah, so we're making this shopping list of... Because we're going to elicit the ego state at some
shopping
point.
List. You're back to retail therapy.
You're making this list of activities, list of people you hung around with, situations you were in where you felt like life was fun. You were having fun. You weren't. Nobody labels it. Oh, you're fun. People call people depressed.
Right.
They label them. Oh, you're suffering from depression. Nobody says. Oh, you're suffering from. You're infected with fun.
Yeah.
Because we realize fun is something we do, but somehow people don't always understand that depression is the result of acting in a way that is depressing you.
That's right. You need a behavior to maintain that state.
Yeah.
And you find out what behaviors maintain the state we call fun or happiness. But I think fun is a better state to use than happiness. Happiness can sound almost kind of bland. But fun seems to have an active quality to it. Now remember, be very careful with this. If you want to find the big chunks. What are the big chunks of what give you fun in life? For me, one of the things...
Let's go through our own personal histories.
Practical jokes. For me, I love... Practical jokes give me some of the greatest enjoyment imaginable. And harmless ones, of course, but the more overwhelmingly, disturbingly funny they are, the better. And there's one I keep saying I want to do. I was telling Ryan and the guys at British Jiu-Jitsu last night, I've got to do this on someone. This is burning a hole in my head. And I'm going to spend an afternoon downtown just doing this. I'll probably go with Paul Pacific, the mentalist. he can document it. I saw a guy do this on YouTube. It's not my original one, but I freaking love it. He just randomly scares people in the street, but it's the way he does it is so hilarious. He walks along down the street fairly normally, and if there's a group of women approaching him, just as he passes them, something's just popped up on your...
Ignore.
Okay, ignore. It's crisis mode. But just as he passes them... and
computer message, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, they're talking to each other, the women, and as he gets even with them, he just suddenly twitches and makes a weird sound.
Oh, just like a...
He'll go walking, just goes... like that, and then
it's sort of like when I've had those moments where you're just sitting. I'm just sitting there, and something shoots through my nervous pathway, and my whole body twitches.
And the women go, ah! And they scream, and it's so funny. Google this. I don't know how you'll find it. It's on YouTube. I just cry laughing watching this stuff.
I can see you doing that, Mike.
Trouble. What are you doing?
Well, you haven't done anything threatening. You've just twitched and sort of pretended to shock yourself.
Or you can look at this. I urge all of you to get out. Just scare some people on the street with this.
Well, people will laugh. They'll only be scared for a moment, then they will laugh at how funny it is.
What's just happened? You and I are both grinning.
We're laughing.
We got endorphin in
system.
our system.
Do you think we've got a different ego state in the executive now?
But we're feeling great.
I don't have that podcast ego state anymore.
No, neither do I. And we haven't even done this on anyone, but the discussion was enough that we're...
I'm associating into this. I'm imagining myself standing next to you doing this, and I am watching the reaction and laughing.
This, buddy.
Yeah.
We need a day downtown. This would be freaking hilarious. And we got to document some of them and get them on video.
Okay, so if we're dealing with someone who says they are depressed, or if we have a friend who's not happy, we have to figure out how to help them
get them having fun.
Get them having fun, which might mean
shopping list.
Get your show. You said shopping list.
I know. Retail therapy.
So you're doing your retail therapy from the past. What is it that used to be fun?
I don't know. Retail therapy is buying things.
I know. I'm giving it a metaphor here.
Okay, it's a really, really weak one. So.
Okay, well, but I admit it, so it's okay.
Hey, scary, you twitched that, yeah.
Nice.
So anyway, so go ahead. You're going to find from the past.
So what did you so practical jokes, you said. I always fall back on a sport like beach volleyball.
Oh, yeah, you're huge.
And I'll tell you, I know it's my fun ego state because Mike, and I was just explaining this to my wife the other day. She says I'm competitive. I say to her, when I'm playing volleyball, I have no freaking idea what the score is. Zero idea what the score is.
Right.
I do not know
in the zone.
Until someone goes, game point. And I go, oh, for who? Like, I don't even know who's winning.
You're in the moment just having fun with it.
I couldn't care less. Now, I'm competitive about my own performance in that moment, too, but mostly I'm just having fun, and I don't care what the score is.
Right.
And so I love volleyball. I love playing in the backyard swimming pool with my kids.
Yes.
I love sledding down a hill in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Those are things
that it could be fun, like reading it, learning a new topic for me. For me, there's nothing as much fun. Right now, I'm doing that meteorology course, and I'm 9 lectures in, and it's fantastic. Heather said to me at the cottage, wonder why there's mist on the water every morning. I said, well, let me explain it to you.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
So fun, if somebody says to you, oh, I can't remember the last time I had fun, you just tell them, well, you're not going back far enough then, because we all had fun as children.
Right.
Pretty much. Most of us did, unless we had absolutely horrible childhoods or something.
Right. Yeah, for sure, man. And you can always find it. And once the person gives you the recipe list, you get them to build those things intentionally back into their life again.
Right.
And what will happen is you will dislodge that depressive state from the executive, and another one will take over.
Here's the cool thing. Let's get back to your comment about moving and breathing.
Yeah.
If you think back to your childhood or early adulthood or anything, all of those activities that we're describing as were fun involved moving.
Right.
None of them were, your meteorology course may be being an exception, but you're doing that now in your 60s.
Yeah.
If you were thinking back to when you're 20s or teens or
can't think back that
whatever,
far.
You're not going to say, oh yeah, I had so much fun just lying on the couch and watching TV.
You said TV.
TV, yeah, watching TV.
What's the emphasis on the wrong?
Watching TV, like TV.
The emphasis on the T.
Yeah, TV. Watching television. Watching whatever. That's, okay, it was fun. But you know what was way more fun and way more prominent in my memory? Playing a family game, let's say.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Rolling the dice or spinning the wheel on the game of life or deciding whether or not to buy Park Place playing Monopoly. Or playing chess with my dad.
Or
beating
something. Michael C. Anthony at backgammon for money, which was phenomenally enjoyable.
So all of those things that they remind me of happy states. They were moving states.
That's good. Yep.
So there you go. So you make this list of things and you design those into your life, and all of a sudden you'll find you're having more fun, and then you'll be in a fun state, right?
Right. And because John Grinder taught me, he said you don't always have to treat a bad state directly. You can sometimes overwhelm it with enough good stuff that it just implodes. And I applaud Sylvia Hartman out of UK. She's a German out of UK, and she's doing her positive EFT, and it works so well where she is overwhelming a negative state with just a ton of positives. And I recommend her book, Positive EFT. I think it's a great one to get.
I agree. It is something that's on my reading list. I haven't gotten through it yet.
Well, we're having so much fun now, Chris, but we got to break it for a second and go to a commercial message from our sponsor. Well, here's your cup of coffee, sir.
Thank you.
A beautiful rainy day out there, isn't it?
It is. It is tiring to look at the rain.
I find, whenever you get a day like this, I like to have a cup of coffee, but it doesn't keep me awake. I get real tired. I always want to get home and stretch out on the couch and take a nap.
I feel exactly the same way. Very often, afternoons like this, I like to have a siesta.
I said nap. Did you say siesta?
I did.
Are you secretly Mexican?
I might be.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, the man who might be Mexican, tonight on the Honey Hallmark Network.
All right, and we're back. So this is the one thing that we have on our list to discuss, and I want to bring it up right now. You can't be depressed and having fun at the same time.
No possible way.
And that's a really cool thing to think about. So it goes, just before the commercial break, you were talking about how you can overwhelm a negative state with enough good stuff.
Right.
So if you build in enough fun into your life, you pretty much you can't be depressed.
No, that's correct. And it's human nature to want variety, to want to apply our brains to things that bring enjoyment to our lives.
Right.
And of course, the more you make life fun for other people as well, the more it's going to come back on you. And I just want to say, we've got on the next podcast, maybe you want to explain what we're coming up to. I think this is going to be along the same lines. We're going to be talking about present and desired states and using direct suggestion hypnosis versus going in the past. But we also want to tie it into something else here.
Well, we're going to be tying it into laughter, right?
Yes,
and that's our next podcast. So we are going to be bringing on a guest. We'll keep you hanging on who it is, but he recently... Actually, no, I won't, because we need to also mention that...
Well, let's do that.
It's about laughter. We're going to be bringing our friend James Hazelrig onto the podcast.
You'll remember it sometime, the ending of one of the podcasts.
We did
maybe
this.
The last one.
I think it was the last one or the one before. We did this crazy, insane laughing at the end.
Yeah, but that was intentional.
It's from his book.
And it's the therapeutic power, the power of laughter and laughter yoga and Hypnosis, hypnosis.
That's what his book is titled,
and
The Little Book of Hypnosis.
It's amazing. So we're going to be talking about that book. We're going to have James on the program.
Right.
Let him talk about it. And honestly, guys, add some intentional laughter to your life.
Well,
laugh on purpose.
It is an important thing because we talked about the moving and the breathing and how those change your states, right? So laughing is a moving and breathing thing.
Yeah.
And there's a psychodynamic loop. Can you say it's a psychodynamic loop really here?
Not psychodynamic,
it's physio-psychological connect. Yeah, it's not the right phrase.
There's a loop.
Psychodynamic loop is the wrong phrase. I'm looking to map that across from the therapeutic model into the idea that how you move your body and how your brain thinks and acts are connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Right? So the physiological and the psychological connection.
It's all just so clear.
Clear. So laughing on purpose is awesome.
I used to laugh on purpose when I played backgammon against Michael C. Anthony. He called it my scarecrow laugh. It would always frighten him. So he'd throw the dice, and if I rolled the balls of fire, which is double six.
Balls of fire.
I'd go like this. And he hated it because it would terrify him every time, make him jump.
Thank you for looking away from the microphone when you did that, because I noticed the meter here indicating the indicating the volume, the
I'm
power.
looking at the size of the spike.
Oh, yeah.
That would have showed up on a seismograph somewhere in the U.S. That was fantastic.
Pretty much.
Okay, where are we going here? What about the empowering question?
So, yeah, why don't you do the empowering question, because it was about fun.
I've got one, buddy, and it's this. Here's my empowering question, our empowering question for all of you. What did you used to do to build a high level of fun into your life? And what are you going to do today to get it back? What did you used to do in the past to get a high level of fun in your life? And what will you do today to make sure you get it back again? Okay, Chris, it's up to me now to ask the question that our listeners around the world are asking. Has there been another Gus Grissom update?
Yes, Mike, there has been another confirmed Gus Grissom sighting after a brief absence from the world scene. Grissom has resurfaced in Australia. Kingsley Gifford was taking his regular morning walk along the beach in Byron Bay. He saw a man in the distance who appeared to be hauling a fishing net out of the ocean onto the beach. He got closer and noticed that it was a parachute attached to a Mercury space capsule. Kingsley, being a helpful man, offered help. The two of them managed to pull the space capsule up onto the beach. The man was wearing a Wu-Tang Clan ball cap and matching swimsuit. He thanked Kingsley for his help, and then the wind blew his hat off when Kingsley said, "I recognized that brush cut. It was Virgil Gus Grissom." Kingsley wanted to stay and chat, but had to get to work. He reported that Grissom seemed healthy and fit, although a bit tired.
It's chilling, Chris. He's got the Mercury space capsule in Australia. He's obviously had it in the water for some reason. He's dragging it out. What the heck is going on?
It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre.
Send in your Gus Grissom updates.
Yes.
And we send them to gusgrissom@mailinator.com, and we will process them for you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in or downloading. This has been Brain Software episode 76 with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. So head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Check out all the awesome stuff we have for you. And as a reminder, if you're enjoying this podcast, give it a rating or a star review. We want to maintain our 5-star rating after however many years we've been doing this now. We're going to keep doing it. We'll see you on the next podcast.
Yes, we will. Hurrah!
And what becomes of you, my love, when you let it slip away? The handbags and the glad rags that your granddad used to sweat for you to buy.
Where the heck did that come from?